Thanks for joining me for episode 6 of the Filled Quiver Outdoors podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and follow, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you know whenever we have new content and new episodes drop. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you leave us a review and share the episode and the show itself with some friends. If you're interested in supporting us, then the number one way that I would love for you to support me is through prayer for myself, prayer for the show. But if you're looking for other ways to support us, the easiest way to do it is just to leave us reviews and again share the show with your friends. But if you're looking to support us in other ways, you can go to our website filledquiveroutdoors.com and buy some swag, and that money will go into the show and help me upgrade the video quality, which that leads to just a few things about this episode. As I mentioned in the last episode, this is the first foray for me into the video podcast. So when I interviewed my guest, Mr. Ed Rigsby, we did the interview, and the video quality is definitely not the best in the world, but it was the best that I could do at the time with what we had available as far as locations to do the interview. As you can see, it's still not the best in the world with the shadows and all, but we're working on it, working on getting the studio set up to make it look better. But the looks of it aren't important. The important part is the message in our conversation, what we talk about in the conversation, and how Ed and Ironman Outdoors work to share the gospel and to share Christ with other men through the retreats that they lead. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you being willing to do this and work with me. I know we've kind of been back and forth on the phone, having to reschedule some, but I'm glad that you're finally here and we're sitting down face to face.
It's my pleasure.
So before we get into Ironman Outdoors itself, let's know a little bit about you and your role specifically with Ironman Outdoors.
In Ironman Outdoors, we have really two categories of people that work, a field staff or a pro staff. We start out at a field staff, and that's just helping, getting involved, being consistent in just being part of ministry. And then as you get more involved with it, if you want to take a larger role on, then you can ask and say, hey, I'd like to do a little bit more. And then the next step would be pro staff. And the pro staff guys are the ones that lead retreats or organize retreats, kind of handle the ins and outs of getting everybody there, what to do, lead the retreat itself, do the discussion times.
Okay.
So that's kind of
Okay. And you guys started with Ironman Outdoors how long ago? How long have you been working with Ironman Outdoors?
I attended my first retreat just as a guest in 2013, and then in 2014, I wanted to do another hunt, and I saw how effective the ministry side of it was, and so I asked the founder of it, hey, how can I be involved? How can I contribute? And so that's how it kind of.
Okay, all right, and I apologize, still getting over this cough. Finally figured out what it was, got me on some medication for it, so hopefully by the next episode it'll be gone. But so how many retreats have you led up to this point?
It's been 6 or 7. I got promoted to a pro staff level about 4 or 5 years ago. I've been in at 9, but went for about 4 years of just being just helping, going on work days, cooking, being a chef or transportation person, getting people into their deer stands and out. And but then so I've been doing the pro staff for about 5 years.
Okay, all right. And I know we'll get into this a little bit more here in a little bit, but I know you mentioned to me that you've got, is it 1 or 2 that you've got coming up that you're
I've got
leading?
one set for in just a couple of weeks in Alabama, and then I'll do another one probably later in the spring. It's not on the books yet because we haven't determined the dates.
Okay.
But I'll probably be involved in that one.
Okay.
Maybe in March.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk some more about the actual retreats
Okay.
and things like that here shortly. But we'll go ahead and move on into now the Ironman Outdoors. Just tell us about Ironman Outdoors, how it got started, what its mission is.
Ironman Outdoors started in 2002. The founder of it, Patrick Tyndall, at his churches. Where would the men? Where you go to Sunday school or go to church, and the wives and the kids would be there, but where are the husbands? And they're off in the woods or on a boat. And why aren't they not here? And so it was kind of a concerted effort to say, let's do something where we can reach this group of people to say, hey, your family's there, you can be there too. And so that's kind of how it got started, was an effort to try to get those men that were, their families were there, but they were not.
Okay. And so the focus became on, or it turned into how to get them there, and then it led to the creation and inception of having these retreats.
Yeah, it started out as a
right?
fishing retreat.
Okay.
They did just a fishing retreat where they invited 4 or 5 guys. I don't think it was a lot of them, and it just evolved into, hey, okay, we had some success there. There's somebody who wants to let us use some land down in Columbia. Man, they did a hunting retreat there, and they stayed in just a little hotel or something, and that took off, and that seemed to be working. They were reaching men, and so it's just evolved into now this pretty large ministry that they've got going.
Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned Columbia. So Ironman Outdoors is based out of South Carolina, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And which that's probably how it's so easy for us to talk about it, because we're both also from South Carolina. But as we were talking earlier before I started recording, I'd actually never heard of Ironman Outdoors until the person that directed me to you as a good guest told me that, hey, I know a guy that you should get in touch with named Ed. He does Ironman Outdoors. My background from coming from triathlons, Ironman Outdoors, okay. So I looked it up and found out it was a completely wrong thing from what I was thinking anyway. But going through the website, it's and the Facebook page, it's very interesting to me, and I like the concept of it and the setup of it. The structure looks great. But I guess let's go into the specifics of the retreats, because that's where the witnessing comes in with the men, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before we get into how that works, let's talk about the retreats themselves, what they are. I know they're on the website. It says that they're hunting and fishing retreats.
Yeah, hunting and fishing, primarily we do more in the hunting. That's just where we find that the guys are more interested in. We do a couple fishing retreats down towards Jacksonville, Florida, or have done so over towards Tallahassee on the other coast. Okay. We still do 1 or 2 of those a year, but primarily it is hunting.
Okay. All right. So right now, correct me if I'm wrong on this number, Ironman Outdoors host retreats in 12 states. Is that right?
Yeah, we've been involved in 12 different states. We have land leases in South Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, Ohio, that we do multiple retreats on in a year. We do get guests that say, hey, man, I had a blast last year. Why don't you come out to my place out in Texas or out in Colorado? So we might do a one-time thing there.
Right.
We do Illinois. We have a goose hunt there. So it's just proceeded to go. You get people that say, man, I had such a great time. That really changed my life. I know this person, and they would love to let somebody come out and do it. Okay. So that's just kind of how it's evolved.
I got you. And I know as of today, well, as of our recording date, I was looking on the website, and unless something has changed since earlier, there are currently 20 retreats listed from the release date of this episode.
there are 20 retreats listed from now into February of 2024. And this is more for the listeners, but as of now, there are 11 of these 20 are already full. That's over 50% full of what the options are. As of now, as you mentioned, the fishing is usually more towards the summer.
Yeah, late spring, early summer.
So right now, everything that's up going into February is all hunting. Right now, there's, and you actually mentioned the Illinois goose hunt. That's the only goose hunt, only waterfowl hunt. All the others are for either deer, hog, combo.
Right.
And they are in North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, and Ohio. Which I guess these are the states that are probably where y'all normally have the hunts.
Yeah, it's the predominant is those states there.
Okay. And I know you mentioned earlier when you're talking about your role as a pro staff, it's the pro staff that really organizes and puts together the retreats. Is that correct?
We'll get the list of the attendees that want to come on a particular date, and then it's up to us to try to say, hey, be consistently giving them emails, updating them on, you need to provide yourself this, you need to get your hunting license by this date, or we're gonna meet at such and such time. We organize, we get guys that help, but who's going to cook on Thursday night, who's going to cook on Friday night, organize any meals. We try to contact the guest and say, do you have any eating limitations? Are you allergic to this or that? Is there something special with your diet that we need to try to provide for you? Right. Those things. And then the pro staff guy will usually lead the retreats, kind of organize, hey, we're leaving the cabin at 5:15 in the morning, be out here at 5:10. And we're going to say, we're going to have prayer, and then we're going to go get in the trucks and go. Okay, we're going to come back, or we're going to provide lunch at this time. You just kind of handle the schedule and keep everybody on track, because it's easy for everybody to want to sit and talk and fellowship and talk about this deer or about this event, but we got to try to keep them on a schedule.
I got you. All right. And I guess this moves into, excuse me again, this moves into the next question, which is really the meat of the matter and the whole premise behind Ironman Outdoors, which are the times of fellowship and discussion where the witnessing opportunities can arise. And you guys refer to this on the website as manhood discussions.
Yeah, manhood discussions are really an authentic, genuine conversation with the guests. We meet in a room all together. It's not a mandatory thing that you have to talk if you want to. Mm-hmm. We do find that guys will, in these remote settings, we get guys that open up a lot. A manhood discussion is basically, the premise of it, or the foundation of it, you can be an outdoorsman. There's nothing wrong with that. God made you that way, but you can be a godly dad, or you can be a godly husband, a godly businessman. Where as men, where are we missing the mark? Where do we fall short? And then try to help them with certain areas. Hey, if it's alcohol, let's do this. And then we try to meet with them one-on-one if we can, and go a little bit deeper with them. But the discussions are basically to get them to open up and develop enough a relationship with them that they can begin to tell you where their struggles are, and then we can go from there and say, okay, let's see if we can help fix this, or here's some safeguards you need to put in your life. Here's this or that will help. Maybe it can help you. And it's just amazing how one guy talks about this, and the guy across the room says, "Oh yeah, I can associate with that." And so it's more discussion instead of open your Bible to this scripture and we're going to study this passage. It's more pertaining to, as guys, where are we missing it?
Okay. And so now with the topics with that, is it just kind of as you get together, it's just whatever's brought up is what you discuss, or do you go into it with the intent of thinking, hey, maybe let's start talking about this, and then if it moves to a different topic, we can do that? Or is it, how do you end up on the topics that you guys talk about?
Patrick has developed a list of maybe 12, 15 topics that are open for discussion. But usually we try to, if we can get the ages of the guys that are going to be coming, we can know, okay, this is a younger group. They're going to be more associated with being dads. Or this is an older group, they're coming up on the senior part of life, and maybe they're wanting this adventure and they're just leaving their wives, or they're just more focused on this outdoor event, and they let their marriage slip. Or it's I'm just consumed with work, and they just so caught up in it that they just want to get out and have this hunt to get away from everything. Okay, but you're leaving something else behind that you should be doing maybe. And so it's kind of, I usually pick out, we have about 3 nights that we do the discussion stuff. So I'll pick out 3 different topics. Usually the ones I pick out are ones that maybe, and when I was a younger man, I had troubles with, that maybe I've grown through some things now, and I can understand maybe where somebody's coming from better than just someone who's never experienced it.
Okay. And talking about the way that you pick, depending on who the audience is going to be for the particular retreat. I noticed that one of the retreats that's coming up is the father-son retreat. What type of topics would be covered on that type of retreat?
One of the things they do is they'll try to get the sons to talk about their dads. What's one good thing or one bad thing that you like about your dad? Okay. And then we'll also talk to the dads to say, hey, what can you do better as a dad to draw your son with you and to be your friend, your buddy, or things like that. But so the father-son ones they're really unique, and it's difficult to keep the attention of kids sometimes when they're out in this world, this outdoor world with a bunch of men. So I've not done one of those father-son retreats yet, but that's kind of how we would look at that.
Okay. So now, in regard to the manhood discussions, you mentioned that there are multiple different topics, a variety of topics that you guys have that you can kind of go through, and depending on the different demographics of a group, what might be more appropriate for another. I would imagine also that different pro staff have more direct personal relationship with some of these different topics also, as far as a personal history with any of these particular topics. Well, would you say that any of the topics are more in line and relatable for you from your history and your background? If so, what would it be? And if you don't mind, just kind of share the story about that.
I think what I feel most comfortable doing, or what I think is a good topic for me, is the husband-wife relationship. We can be outdoorsmen, we can be good outdoorsmen, we can be hunters, but we can be godly husbands, and God wants us to be that. There was areas in my first marriage that I failed at. And then at one time God challenged me to, as a husband, what does it mean to love my wife like Christ loved the church? And I kept hearing this on the radio day after day. I heard it 3 times in 2 days. And it was like, okay, God was getting my attention. And so after I lost my first wife, a few months later, I started going through, or before she got sick, I started going through this, how to do that. What does it look like? And so when I started loving her the way I should, my marriage got better. I was faced with, are you going to love her when she has no hair? Are you going to love her when she can't do this or that? She can't function. She can't cook or clean when you have to do it all. Are you just going to love her for who she is, and without any concern about what she can't do or a fault that she may have? And as I went through that journey, my marriage got better when I started doing it right. When I started doing it God's way, that's when my marriage was great, was at the end when she would just lean up against my shoulder. We'd sit on the couch, maybe watch a movie or something on TV, and we would just talk, and I would rub her bald head, and she would say, "Oh, you don't know how good that feels." And the joy that was there in just loving her the way God loves us, And that's what he wanted me to do. So my marriage got best when I started doing that. And I found that within the Ironman group, that's maybe where I connect better with guys, is that area of marriage, a practical loving her the way I'm supposed to. It is such a joy when I see a man that comes on a retreat that says, when I go home, I'm not going home. I'm done with marriage. And then we talk to him a little bit, maybe some one-on-one conversations. And we point out that God never says, Ed, I'm done with you. You've got this fault, and I'm just not feeling it anymore. And I'm going to move on from you, and I'm going to go find somebody else. God does not do that to us, and that is one of the ways that Christ loves the church, is that He doesn't give up on us. He doesn't quit, and that's what He wants in marriage. He doesn't want us to quit, and so I find that as just a real avenue to be able to talk with guys about, man, because I remember when my marriage was in a tough spot, and I decided not to quit. I had the opportunity to quit. I said, no, I'm not going to quit. And then as we proceeded in marriage, it just got better and better as when I started doing what I was supposed to do.
Okay. And I know that God provided for you after your first wife passed. He provided you with.
Yes, I actually met a lady who used to go to our church years ago. My first wife and her actually used to sing together a little bit. Someone that I had known her family, her kids were in youth group with when my kids, and she had moved away for a little bit, and then she came back, and we started talking, and she was taking care of a person. She was a caregiver for a friend of hers, and we just got talking about being caregivers, and then we went out for coffee, and then just to kind of get away from it and talk, and it just blossomed into something that, even though I lost my first wife, God in His goodness and His graciousness says, I've got someone else that you can be with. And so we dated in a godly manner, and we dated for 4 or 5 years until I felt like the timing was right. And so God has not left me alone by myself. My kids are all grown, but I used to would tell God, I don't want to be old and alone. And so God has provided, and His goodness is just amazing to me, that He would take someone like Ed Rigsby and say, you know what, I understand what you're going through. I feel for you, and I'm gonna take care of that. I'm gonna give you someone else that you can love. It is different than the first wife, but God is awfully good.
I got you. And so anyone who's listening that's already possibly prior to listening was considering going on one of the Ironman retreats, but now that they've heard your story, and maybe they can relate, they're in a similar place, and they're thinking, hey, I'd kind of like to go on a retreat that Ed is organizing or leading, because I think that I could benefit from picking his brain and talking to him about his story and learning more about him. What would be the easiest way for somebody to go about doing that, finding one that you're leading?
Go on to the website. We list the different hunt dates and the locations, and if you can scroll down to the bottom, usually it's on the last page, and it'll have the person who's leading that retreat. It'll have their name and their phone number, and I think the email address.
Okay.
We use that as a way to communicate with guests, so you can see which ones that I'm doing, or which one Patrick or whoever pro staff is doing, and it is such a joy to talk about that. It's just personal life. It's just what I went through, what other men are going through. And it's such a joy when you hear somebody say, man, I'm not going to quit. I'm about to divorce my wife, but at the end of the retreat, he would tell me, I have a dinner date with my wife when I get back, and I'm not going to quit. And that just excites me so much. So you can see the different guys who are leading retreats through the website. You just look at that particular retreat, scroll down to the bottom, it'll tell you who's leading that one.
Like we said, that's that's the important part of these retreats. At least from everything I've seen on the website, that is, if there was not the manhood discussions, then it would just be a group of guys going out on a hunting trip.
Yeah.
Now, as far as folks who want to look into going on one of these retreats with Ironman Outdoors, they can register through the website.
Yep.
Now let's talk about that a little bit. As far as these retreats, I know some of the audience might be wanting to know, well, what type of lodging is it? Because you mentioned people will like lease land, be like a one-off type thing on somebody's property in we'll just say Texas, or even here in South Carolina. And I went ahead and looked at some of the retreats. I already know the answer for the most part. But what I'm curious about is it typically the same type of lodging? Like, is it an actual, like, 4 walls and a roof? Or are there ever any, like, camping retreats? Or how does the lodging typically work?
It's generally a cabin or a camp. In one of the tracts of land we have in Alabama, we're staying at a state park that have these little small cabins in it. In Kentucky, we have a cabin that's there that's real close to the properties, within 15 to 20 minute ride of where we're going to hunt. Okay. The other tract of land in Alabama, we have a house cabin type thing that we've added on to, and we use that as it's right there on the property or right next to it. Okay. So, but we do have sometimes some trips that, hey, we're going to stay at a hotel. Like, there's not a place there, but we're going to put you up somewhere.
Okay, I got you. And so that kind of leads into the next question, which is cost. Everybody's wanting to know, what does one of these retreats cost?
Typically between like $425 to $1,100 is about the range. That depends on those tracts of land and the lease amounts that we have to pay to lease. Okay. Ohio and Kentucky are the highest because that's a very large deer population up there. Right. So a lot of big deer. So the land leases kind of dictate what we have to get to cover our expenses. Okay.
Yeah, and just for reference, I think the lowest one currently listed is the $425, and the most expensive one is the $1,100. And I don't remember where the $1,100 one was, but I think the $425 one was actually here in South Carolina.
Yeah, White Oak, South Carolina, just down above Columbia, right, and near Winnsboro. The land lease is not as expensive. It is a deer hog retreat in the fall, but then we may extend it into the springtime when it's just hogs only. Okay. And so that you get a little bit, it does sometimes take a little longer to fill up. Right. So it's not something that we think we can charge an extreme amount. It's enough to cover the land leases and our expenses of where we're staying.
I got you. And so now that we know what they cost, what is included in this cost?
Your transportation you pay to get up there, you pay for your hunting license, but we will provide all your lodging, your food, transportation to and from the cabins. We will help you get deer in and out, help you take it to a processor if that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. We provide all, breakfast, lunch, dinner type stuff.
All right. And I know on the few of the retreats that I went into and read through the slideshow describing about the particular retreat, it mentioned that these are actually, you will be taken to your stand by the guide or by one of the pro staff, and they'll come and pick you up at the end of the hunt. So now that we've talked about what is included, you've already mentioned transportation, licenses are not included. Obviously, if you're wanting to participate, you would need to bring your own weapon. And I guess as far as the retreats go, for guys that might be interested, they would obviously have to look into what the different laws are based on the state and the time that the retreat is. But on the website within the retreat, is it typically mostly clarified as far as what weapon they can use, whether it's a primitive, archery, rifle? Okay. Yeah.
We'll define on those retreats certain ones from Ohio or Kentucky from these dates to this date. This is bow only. Okay. We do one in Kentucky. It's the last 2 days of bow and then the first 2 days of muzzleloader.
Okay.
So you need, bring both.
Okay.
But when you do the Kentucky, the black powder, you need to be wearing orange. But for the
Right.
bow, you don't have to. So we try to clarify and give
Okay.
them good direction on what they need.
I got you. And so now, as far as someone going on to the website and actually registering, I did not go through that process. I've never been on one of the retreats. Now, I did notice that on the retreats there are two options. There is a half pay and a full pay. And it seemed like, and I may have been looking at it wrong, but some of them still had full pay slots open, but all of the half pay slots were closed, were full. Do they do that differently?
Now,
is there a different number?
Half pay is just someone has put the 50% down, the deposit down. We have a whole slot that's open that's not been, no deposits made.
Okay.
So then
Gotcha.
we also have spreadsheets for the pro staff guys that say, hey, you've got these 10 guys coming.
Mm-hmm.
3 of them haven't paid the full amount yet. You need to
Okay.
try to get with them and make sure that they get you the remaining balance. So half
Okay.
pay is just someone, the slot has been reserved because they put 50% down.
Okay.
Or this guy went ahead and I just paid everything all up front and it's done. So we know
Okay.
that guy's fully paid.
Okay. So if somebody was wanting to put a deposit down, but it was only showing full pay available, could they just send an email or make a phone call and see if there would even be an option at that point to just do the deposit and then pay it off later? Or is that usually just switch over when it's pretty much right at time for the treat to come up, and it's like, it's a week down the road, 2 weeks down the road, can't really do half pay now and the rest of it in a day and a half. Just
correct.
Okay.
It's just typically for us, the Ironman guys, to know, okay, I need to keep track of, hey, these 3 guys haven't paid yet. I need to send them emails and stuff and say, hey, you haven't paid yet. We know that this one spot has been fully paid for, this one's half. Are you having troubles, or do you need to back out? And do we need to go back and make that, give you your money back? Something happened, you lost your job or whatever. But it's just basic and who's paid the deposit and how many slots are still open.
Okay. All right. And then I guess my last question about the retreats and the registrations are, what is probably an average number of men that are allowed to go on the retreats? Or does that vary based on where it is and the lease and accommodations?
Accommodations and the leases. What farms are we going to hunt this time? We're going to hunt these 5 farms over here in Kentucky, or we're going to go to these 3 properties and primarily focus over here. Most of the time it's between 10 to 12, 13 people, and then 3 Ironman people that are involved in it. Okay.
All right. So it's still a pretty small group for people to be comfortable talking during the manhood discussions. Right. Okay.
If it gets too large, a lot of guys just want to back up and I'm just going to sit here and be quiet.
I got you. Well, now that we've talked about Ironman Outdoors, there were a few things that I wanted to ask you about as far as supporting Ironman Outdoors, getting involved in Ironman Outdoors. But first, let's talk about the ways that people can get directly involved. And you already mentioned that earlier when you were explaining your background. But for somebody just wanting to look into getting involved and helping directly, like being a volunteer, being a field staff, pro staff, how would somebody go about doing that?
They want to contact Patrick Tyndall and say, hey, I'm interested. And he may say, okay, what do you like? Do you like the deer hunting, or do you want the fishing? Or he'll try to get with you and talk and discuss, what do you like? What do you prefer? This is what we need. Do you see yourself fitting in to say, I can do that, or I can provide a tractor do a food plot, or I've got 2 chainsaws I can bring and we can cut limbs, or I have got carpentry skills and we can work on the cabin. What do you feel like you can contribute, and then how can we plug you in? Where would be the best to put you?
Okay. And they can do that. His email is on the website, I believe, which I'll have in the notes section of this episode. We'll have the Ironman Outdoors website linked where people can go directly to it. And I'll actually touch base with him and see about including his email there and in the notes as well. But outside of a direct involvement, being physically present to help in some way, what are some other ways to support Ironman Outdoors? And we'll start with this one, because this is the one that I always ask for the most support with this show and with everything else, is prayer. Is there any specific way that listeners can pray for Ironman Outdoors?
Primarily in prayer is just, as we do the retreats, we have a prayer team or a group of guys that say, they send out to all the rest of the Ironman guys, we're having a retreat here going on. These are the guests. Just pray that God will use that retreat to reach these men's hearts. And so that's kind of primarily the prayer request. Part of it is safety as we take them out. They've got guns and bows, and so for safety, but then also, Lord, make it effective, make it reach these guys, make it reach this group of men that you've put together. So praying is that's the avenue of prayer. Or, Lord, give them the finances. Or, is there someone out there who has some land they'd like to let us use? That, we've got an older lady in Kentucky that went to one of the churches of one of the Ironman guys there, and she heard him talking about it, and she's like, well, that sounds really neat. I've got this farm over there, got this 300 acres over here. And she just voluntarily decided, well, why don't you let him come on over here? These deer are eating my soybeans. And so she volunteered for us to use their land.
Okay.
They do. You can contribute financially. It is strictly volunteer stuff. Donate materials for shooting houses or things like that.
Okay. And as far as donating financially, they can do that by going through the website, and either making I guess they could link up with Patrick, and he can tell them how to do a direct donation.
There are directions on the website. Okay. If you're just giving a gift, then you can go through this area of the website and do that. Okay.
But if you have the land or an item that you think might be beneficial, like with lumber material to build stands or blinds, whatnot, probably would be best suited to shoot Patrick an email like, hey, I have this, could you use it?
Yes.
And what's the best way for me to get it to you?
Patrick, there's a board members group so Patrick will get these. If someone presents an item or something, then they'll bring it together and say, okay, hey, this person over in Alabama has offered to let us use this. What do you think about it? And so they'll usually get Patrick and the board members will get together and talk about what it is and how can we use that, or do we think that's safe? Do we think that's good or wise? And then they'll go with it.
Okay. And then another way that folks that are listening that might want to support is on the website. There's a store with Ironman branded merchandise also. They could order a t-shirt or a hat, and then the proceeds from that gets pumped back into the program, right?
Yes.
Okay. And outside of that, it sounds like a great program, great ministry that's continuing to go strong all these years and just getting bigger. But I know I would like to hear a little bit more about your personal testimony. I'm sure some of the listeners, to whatever level you're comfortable giving your testimony and how you came to know Christ.
I got to say, when I was 12, I went to a church down in Florida where I lived, that the pastor came that night. It was a Sunday night, and I remember him talking. It was not a scary message, but there is a reality of heaven and hell, and you've got to make a choice. And like I said, I was about 12 or 13, and I knew the answers. I knew what the criteria was for access to heaven, but had I ever made that choice? And I had not, and I knew that I needed to. I needed to get that settled. And so that's kind of on a Sunday night when he explained that God says, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No man comes to the Father but by me. So I had to accept it or I had to not to. And there was just a choice to be made, and I knew what choice I wanted.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to let me pick your brain about Ironman Outdoors today. And but before I let you go, there's a new segment now that I finally have a guest that I've been itching to do, called Me Too. And the reason I've called it Me Too is because it's like 20 questions, but there's not 20 questions, so can't call it 20 questions. But also, this is good for the listeners also and the viewers. How much do you have in common with my guest? That's what we're going to find out. And now, some of these questions might seem a little silly, a little off the wall, but why not? I mean, let's just have fun. So, first off, and now, if you're listening, keep track. See how many of your answers are the same as Ed's. And, feel free, if you're not in a crowded airport with your earbuds in, to yell "Me too" whenever he says the same answer that you've got. If you've got your earbuds in at the airport and you want to do it anyway, go ahead. I don't care. Let folks think you're crazy. All right, so number one, do you keep toilet paper in your vehicle for emergencies and or on-the-whim adventures?
I do, in the back left door.
Me too. All right. What is your preferred mode of camping? Hammock or other open air? Tent or a camper/RV?
When I was younger, it was a tent, but now it's more of a camper.
Okay. I'm tent or hammock all the way. Now my family, they're tent glampers. I mean, you could not tell the difference from the inside of our tent to an RV except for temperature. But when we go, I mean, we've taken portable air conditioner units, mini fridges, lamps, tables, you name it. It's been inside the tent. But I just soon stretch out the hammock personally. All right. Now, this one I've got to write down, so bear with me just a minute. Actually, you know what? We won't write it down. I'll just ask you. All right. Pronunciation. Crappie or crappie?
Crappie.
Okay. Me too. Outdoor or nature-related career that you would love to do?
DNR.
DNR. Game warden?
Yeah.
Yep. I've actually told somebody earlier today that if I were to get back into law enforcement, that would be the only thing I would currently be interested in doing, law enforcement-wise. Mountains or beach?
Mountains, definitely.
Okay, so when you pack your snacks for your outdoor adventures, for your day in the stand or morning out on the boat or hike, what is a staple that you have to include?
Granola bars.
Granola bars. Man, that's not even on my list. I'm going to have to add that to my list. Jerky, Vienna sausages, or trail mix?
Vienna sausages.
Okay.
With a cracker.
Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard them? You're from South Carolina, too.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard them called stand-up weenies?
No.
Okay. Well, that's what we call them at our church.
Okay.
So, if you hear stand-up weenies, that's what folks are talking about,
okay.
in Lawrence anyway. Now, do you keep up with bass tournaments? Bass fishing, any at all?
Not as much.
Okay. No. I know they recently just changed MLF's rule from 5 fish limit to going back to if you catch it, it counts kind of thing. If you were to put on a fishing tournament, what is a rule that you would put in place?
Minimum 2-pound keeper.
Okay. What is your favorite Bible story?
Abraham. Yeah, to leave his country, to leave. How can you say God has not got a sense of adventure when he takes Abraham out and he has to go to a different land, leave what he's grown up with, leave his home, and go out and just by faith go take this place. So okay. Abraham.
What is a outdoor related slang term that you've heard that you didn't know what it meant? Either until it was explained to you you had to look it up, or you had to hear it over and over and over for it to finally click? Or what is the funniest, silliest, craziest outdoor slang term that you can think of?
I've heard guys refer to a doe as a slickhead.
Okay.
And that I've never heard that before.
Is that something that you've heard around here?
Yeah.
Huh. This is the first time I've ever heard that.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
A friend of mine down in Columbia area, fellow coworker, I said, "What did you say?" A slickhead. I said, okay.
Okay. What is one outdoor skill or knowledge that you feel everyone should possess? Every man or woman should possess a skill or knowledge.
A great sense of direction.
Okay. What is an outdoor activity that you've never done, but you would be interested in learning more about or attempting at some point?
Fly fishing.
Fly fishing, really?
Yeah. That just sounds like that just would be a lot of fun to do that.
It is, and it's so much easier than people think. And which I actually went an earlier episode talks about my first time actually going fly fishing, and I actually caught 2 red-eye bass. And had no clue what I was doing.
I tried it one time with a guy up in North Carolina, and I was in the trees more than I was in the water.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, thankfully I was in a very, very wide spot of the river, so I didn't have to. I got hung up once, but then I moved back out toward the middle. But so what do you think is the most unique thing on your outdoor bucket list? If you have one, or if you don't, what would be something that you think not a lot of people would have on their list?
Done it once, so I can't say it's a bucket list, but being in a very remote place on snowmobiles.
Okay.
I had a chance to go a little bit, but I would like to do more of a long-term trip on snowmobiling.
Okay.
It seems like it'd be a lot of fun.
Like an overnight type trip with snow? Okay, That's cool. That's cool. Now, canoe, kayak, paddle boat, or stand-up paddleboard?
Canoe.
Canoe?
Yeah.
All right. And now this one I do have a picture, if I can find it. Now you'll be able to see it already. But for the audience here, listeners, and for those of you who are not watching, you'll hear in just a moment what it is. But there are 2 terms for this. What is your term for this?
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch. Okay. So I'm Bigfoot all the way, unless I'm trying to feel intelligent or look smart to somebody. And this is actually a 2-parter question. Does Sasquatch exist?
No. I don't think so.
Well, like I said, this was just to be silly and to have some fun, so I appreciate you playing along. I don't know how many times you guys said me too along. I said it a few times out loud. I said it several more times in my head. But this is something that we'll keep doing with all of our guests in the future. Keep checking back with us. And as of now, like I said in the last episode, I believe, at least through the end of 2023, we'll be looking at releasing episodes every other Friday. Life happens. I have 5 kids, full-time job. This is a hobby, a ministry, out of pocket for me. So if I don't get it released on Friday, it will be sometime that weekend, but I will do everything within my power to have it out by about 4 or 5 o'clock Eastern time on Fridays. And make sure you sign up to get notifications and alerts, and that you're following us. Leave me a review. If you don't like the content, that's fine. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you would like. I'm free change. I can change. I can humor folks. I have very thick skin. Takes a lot to offend me. Give me some good feedback. If you like what's going on, even better. Let me know. Leave some good reviews. But I got several other good guests lined up. Got some great episodes in the works. So until next time, keep on keeping on.